spoke of earlier, this period of his work was, for me, in my youth, some of the freshest work I'd seen. I was in Italy at the time. I was studying in Florence, Firenze, in '76, and he had done that exhibition. And I spent a lot of time going up there because it just was, to me, so fresh. I had known of his work. I had studied his work. I have a degree in art history and was very aware of his work. I had seen a few works at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, although he lived just a few miles from me. I was not the type of person that would go knock on someone's door and say, I want to meet you. And then as I did meet him in the late '70s when I returned to the United States, only with the idea that I would probably paint some houses to get enough money to return to Italy to finish my master's degree, I met Rauschenberg, and we became good friends. I participated in a print project that he did with collaboration with William Burroughs, the author, and it was called American Pewter. And that was the beginning of me working for him. And of course, at that time, I was young and lowest on the totem pole, so I had to do things like paint houses and clean up after dog messes and whatever was available. And as years went by, we became better friends, and we traveled throughout the world together, and then we collaborated on a series called Quattro Mani, which actually started in Italia. The idea came, and Adelina von Furstenberg of the Art of the World had come up with this idea one night of Bob and I working on paintings together, because I had assisted him for so many years. And I also was becoming recognized myself for my own art. And there was two people at the piano playing together, Quattro Mani. And I said, it sounds interesting. What do you think, Bob? He said, yeah. And I said, okay, let's do a series, and let's call it Quattro Mani, Four Hands. And we did 4 sets of those series. And the first one was that was actually pretty late. In '95, I believe. It was the Biennale of '95. And we showed them in the cloisters of San Lazzaro, the pieces. And after that, we did a set called the Winter Quattro Mani. And then we did 2 others. And but I traveled through the world with him, and Bob had he in himself was such an open and generous and very easy person to be with. Always fun, sense of humor. And we always were in high-profile situations, like coronations of the Malaysian king, or in the White House frequently. And we were at the Millennium Party. And I don't know, I could name drop forever. But Bob was also a generous person. He participated in a lot of healing of the world, from leprosy, AIDS. He was very important in AIDS research with Elizabeth Taylor in the beginning years when people were frightened of people with AIDS. I know that we were at an opening for Robert Mapplethorpe, and people were standing 15 feet away from him. Bob never had HIV or never was HIV positive, but Bob felt so sorry for Robert. He comes up to Robert and he says, Robert, and he gives a big hug and a kiss on the lips. And then people started getting closer, because Bob did not have fear. And that's why it was wonderful traveling with him. We would go to third world countries. We stayed with headhunters tribes, with heads hanging over us, so we had to have blood spread on us so that we would not have to shed blood. And Bob was young then. When I met Bob, he was 2 years younger than I am now. I was 27, I guess, something like that, and he was 54. And then, of course, at that time, he was such a vibrant person. One never thought about that. You travel, you walk. He could walk as fast as I did. We were always photographing and everything. But in the last 9 years, life became very difficult for him, because he broke his hip. and that caused complications, and then he had a stroke, which paralyzed his right side, and his hand was stuck up here. He never acknowledged it, and at openings it was extremely painful because he couldn't move that. And of course everybody wants to grab his right hand, so I always made sure that his nurses always stuck the right side so they'd have to go to the left side, because he would not acknowledge the pain. But I know, having been so close, the extreme amount of pain, but yet he always was open and generous to people and ignore his pain. And he was in a lot of pain in the last few years. But yet his brain, his mind, was so crisp up until his last breath was so clear. And he made the decision, because he was on a respirator, he could not breathe on his own. He could not eat, so he had a tube in his stomach. And he was very swollen, full of fluid. He called his doctors in, and he said, "What do I have? What, I mean, just be straight with me. Is there any possibility of anything more?" And they had to tell him no. And he said, "Well, I want it to be unplugged tonight." And his sister was there, and I was there, and I was sort of not expecting that, because Bob loved life. He was going to take it as far as it could go. He was hoping there was one more possibility. And when he made the decision, I saw him basically relax. He was in his studio. They brought him home from the hospital. And when they brought him home from the hospital 5 days before he died, and they brought him in the elevator up into his studio, he said, "This is the happiest moment of my life." But 5 days later, he realized, I can't do anything. I'm stuck in this body. And the hard part is he was so alert and so aware. But when he made a decision, I saw his body, he relaxed and smiled. And as all things in Bob's life, when he made a decision, it was decisive. Correct, incorrect, it was decisive and clear, and usually it was correct. And for a man that was born in a very poor neighborhood, had very little as a child, in the Depression in the United States, in Texas, in a oil town, and his father took on his mother's sisters to live with him, so he had to sleep on the porch outside, on the screen porch. Well, he made a wonderful life, and one thing he always said to me, he said, "You know, I had nothing to lose. I came from nothing." But I should not say this, because it's, you know, all the figures aren't in. Let's put it this way: he died one of the wealthiest people in the United States. But he gave most of it away. But the more he gave, it just seemed to come. And so he'd give more away. He loved giving away, and he taught me that. And that's why he left me president of his foundation, because he said, "I do not want all my wealth to perpetuate myself. I want it to help the world." And that was Bob, my friend.